Well, there's a deep state in Venezuela, which has been running this whole organization for years.
Are you joining my vigilante army to kidnap Maduro? You in?
He is definitely a narco criminal. Taking out the cartels is the goal. Secondary or tertiary effects is that Maduro loses his backing.
Colombians all mouth, no trousers.
Yes, I think that's about right.
Is President Donald Trump sleepwalking into war in Latin America? What began as a drug mission off the coast of Venezuela with 7 strikes killing more than 30 people, well, has now taken a sharp turn. A new player has entered the mix, Colombia. While Venezuela is mobilised, Russian-armed militias are itching. Now Colombia's leader, Petro, is openly talking about getting rid of Trump, which is something of a red flag. Now, joining me now for a full breakdown of what's going on is analyst Raul, and Navy veteran Brent Sadler is still with us. Mr. Mass, take us up to date on the developments. What started with those strikes on narco boats, we can get into the details and the legality of that shortly. Now sounds like Trump threatening to put boots on the ground, striking targets on South American soil. And now the Colombians are entering the knife fight with some pretty fruity threats. This is hotting up, Brent.
Yes, I don't think it necessarily equates to boots on the ground. There's no question that I'm sure Brent will confirm this, but that the naval force that we have in the Caribbean is quite robust. We have the USS Iwo Jima that I've had the pleasure to be on several times, as well as, I believe, 3 guided missile destroyers, a frigate, littoral combat ship. We have a lot of assets, 4,500 Marines and sailors on board. I wouldn't characterize that as an invasion force, but rather a very robust amphibious group ready to either insert or extract people from Venezuela as needed. They obviously have particularly destroyers, have a very strong strike capability if needed. We have F-35s in Puerto Rico. The Iwo Jima will have both fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft on board it. The U.S. is very well positioned for any possible contingency. The president has made it known that there are, in fact, a covert operation, a CIA covert operation taking place within Venezuela. We don't know exactly what the nature of that is, but I think the U.S. is doing more than saber rattling here, that's for sure. But I don't think it's a full-scale invasion. Obviously, an enormous amount of pressure being put on the Maduro regime.
Maduro says he will respond with fire to any aggression. How seriously should we take that? And how we see sort of Venezuela painted as a sort of collapsing backwards dictatorship. But how seriously should we take those threats? And are they poking a Latino bear there?
I wouldn't describe him as a bear, but when you've got U.S. lives, U.S. forces in the area, with quite frankly overwhelming force at their disposal, any threat against those assets are going to be taken seriously. The U.S. is very well equipped to respond and respond quite decisively, given the nature of the force that they have assembled. But again, I don't think that's what the intention here is, not to provoke a war. The intention here is to displace a party or a group of individuals that are basically narco traffickers that have overstayed their welcome. Remember that in July of 2024, Venezuela had elections. And by all accounts, international observers, lots of people have said that the opposition party, Vente Venezuela, the unitary party that was led by Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez, defeated Maduro. And he's basically overstayed his welcome. He's an illegitimate regime. What we're trying to do here is put into place the democratically elected government of Venezuela that was elected in July of 2024. And the person and the party in power have refused to budge. refused to budge, I should say.
Brent, Sadler, even US commanders admit they're operating in a, and I quote, an environment of high escalation risk. If you could put that into English for us, there is, as Raul says, it may not be the goal to do anything other than sort of target narco sites and narco targets, but there is a risk that this gets out of hand, isn't there?
Well, lethal force has been authorized, and you see that with the drug boats that are being taken out with casualties and killed in action being racked up. So with those military, should Venezuela decide or feel that they are in a place where their rules of engagement would dictate returning fire, I don't see that as very likely for the reasons that Raul mentioned already. It would be suicidal because what President Trump's military has arrayed is a pretty substantial hammer. And the name of the game for military operations is to provide your political leadership as many options to respond flexibly so your adversary can't anticipate and get ahead of you, and also so that you can control the dynamics. It's pretty clear that President Trump right now wants to keep this offshore and targeting the cartels. And I'd have to say, though, the public statements, I think, also judged by the military operations that are ongoing, taking out the cartels is the goal. Secondary or tertiary effects is that Maduro loses his backing from the money and the muscle that the cartels provide him at home to maintain his rule. And so by taking out the cartels, you indirectly are undermining a regime that I think has lived long past its due and is not the elected representative of the people of Venezuela either. And again, there's quite a lot of countries that do not recognize Maduro's government.
Gentlemen, more broadly put to you, Mr. Mass, the White House or the Pentagon still haven't given any key information on the names, identities of these people that have been taken out. Often in scenarios like this, there is, background briefings and information provided. There remains a large question about the precedent for this, the legal underwriting of these attacks. We had Senator Joni Ernst on last night, who said she'd been privately briefed that it was all tickety-boo and all above board. But it is a bit of a grey area the administration is operating in right now, isn't it?
Well, I think what you're seeing here is, quite frankly, the United States reasserting its dominance in the Western Hemisphere, reasserting the Monroe Doctrine, reasserting the Roosevelt Corollary from the beginning of the 20th century, that basically is saying, look, we are not going to allow foreign players to interfere in the Western Hemisphere. And the fact of the matter is that there are foreign players at work here. Iran has had a long relationship with Venezuela, as has Russia. China buys the bulk of Venezuela's oil. And we know, the one thing I would disagree with Brent on is that, the cartel and the Maduro regime are not separate entities. They are one and the same. The Cartel de los Soles includes Nicolás Maduro, who has a $50 million bounty on his head. So, the U.S. has designated the cartel and therefore these ships that are operating as a foreign terrorist organization, which, again, I'm not a legal scholar when it comes to these matters, but I assume that means that they are legal targets. I mean, they are viable targets. If we have designated them as a terrorist organization, they are seeking to cause harm to the United States. That's the justification. I think, quite frankly, most Americans are in favor of that. We're tired of seeing our citizens die on the street from fentanyl and heroin and cocaine. And I think, there's an existential threat here to Maduro because Maduro and the cartel, the Los Soles, are one and the same. These guys are not there defending the sovereignty of Venezuela. They are defending the billions of dollars that are coming into the country as a result of the drug trade. Venezuela now generates more money from the drug trade than they ever did producing petroleum. And by the way, Venezuela still has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, in excess of what Saudi Arabia has, but they're producing a fraction of it because they've, let it go to hell in a handbasket. And in the meantime, they focused on drugs instead of exporting oil.
Brent Sadler, are you confident the legal underwritings of this intervention are watertight?
There's clearly a precedent for what President Trump is doing. in the international water space going after the cartels. It's not clear what the legal case is because it's been provided in a classified setting to Congress, but clearly the president acting within his constitutional prerogatives as the commander-in-chief, I think, is the legal basis in which he starts from.
And also, I mean, it's hard to sort of try and pitch these as nice, innocent fishermen when they are in operating ginormous submarines. Raul,
Yes.
how concerned we should be about the wider noise? Obviously, we saw what the president of Colombia was saying there today about getting rid of Trump. Could we see Venezuela's sort of erstwhile allies and regional partners start to up the ante too?
Yeah. Well, look, up until recently, Venezuela was a very strong partner of the United States. We were instrumental in helping the Colombians defeat the FARC, the revolutionary activities in Venezuela, in putting a lid on the drug trade. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, they had elections, and they, in fact, elected a former member of the FARC to be their president. So, now we have this situation where you have two leftists, side by side, a president in Colombia and a dictator in Venezuela, both of whom are left-leaning, both of whom are, anti-U.S. for lack of a better word. I don't take Gustavo Petro that seriously. I don't think he's going to be around much longer. I think the Colombian people will come to their senses. He's got a whole lot of issues, including, I think, some serious mental issues. And I don't say that lightly. I think that, his behavior at times has demonstrated that. So, he may be kind of half-cocked, but I don't think he's a danger to the U.S. military. I don't think the Colombian military would, up until recently, one of the generals of the Colombian military was actually serving at U.S. Southern Command. He was part of the joint staff at U.S. Southern Command. So the U.S. military cooperation with the Colombian military has historically been very strong relationship and a very positive one. I don't see the Colombian military going to war with the U.S. given the historic nature that our two countries have.
Brent, Sadler, you agree? Colombians all mouth, no trousers?
Yes, I think that's about right. I happened to be in Colombia and those elections were happening. It was surprising, but I don't think the Colombian people are enamored with their president anymore. And they're still a democracy, so I do think Petro's time is actually coming to a close, not a threat. But right now, the focus is going after the cartels, cut off their money and their markets, and hopefully weaken enough the Maduro regime that it collapses inward on itself. Though I agree, they are very closely aligned, if not one and the same.
Final question to you both. There's a $50 million price on Maduro's head for someone to get him to the United States alive. Both of you, you first, Raul. Reckon someone out there is plotting it now, plotting an extraction, and do you think they'll be able to do it? You only need to get him to Puerto Rico, right?
I don't know, but it certainly has Maduro looking over his shoulder at all times. The one thing I will caution, though, is that even if you do have a successful regime change, if you will, it's going to be a mess afterwards. The transition is going to be very, very difficult. There are a lot of people. There's a deep state in Venezuela, which has been running this whole organization for years, and we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with them.
What about you, Brent Sadler? Are you joining my vigilante army to kidnap Maduro? You in?
Well, I think it's important to understand why that bounty is on his head is because he is definitely a narco criminal himself, and he is actively engaged in the trade. And that is with open now indictments on him. So you can actually see for yourself what the charges are, and a reasonable amount of, and an American standard, evidence against him is why. So it's not for geopolitical purposes, though that would also be a grounds for taking such action. But I'm more for the take out the money supply and let it collapse inward, and the Venezuelans decide how they want to govern themselves better after a Maduro regime.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Navy veteran Brent Sadler there and analyst Raul. Come back and see us as this plays out. It's definitely a fascinating one for us to keep a very close eye on. Thank you for joining us. Still with me in the studio is Adrienne Gray. Adrienne, wouldn't the Republicans right now be saying, if this was a Democrat president doing this and the shoe was on the other foot, that this is an illegal war, it's an illegal intervention with no precedent, no basis, and it risks dragging America into yet another conflict, this time pretty much on its doorstep?
I'm glad you brought that up because I think the leftist media and honestly the globalist agenda, they've colluded together to also deny that this cartel is an issue. I mean, when you talk about the humanitarian crisis that's going on in Venezuela, everyone on the left and all of the Democrats should be on board to
But they were cheering Maduro, half of them, weren't they?
Exactly, but it doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. So I think it's interesting, and I think also, you know, they warn time and time again, President Trump, he's just going to start another war. He's going to start. Look at the facts and look at history. He's not starting wars.
Well, he's trying. I mean, he's risking. The U.S. commanders saying they're operating in an environment of a high escalation risk, which is basically saying this could go really badly wrong. And one stray drone strike on the wrong boat, and we're in very. Listen,
it could go bad. People also said that President Trump wasn't going to win the election again. You got to have faith.
Do you think that the American public seeing a president willing to take any means necessary, to coin a phrase, to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States, stop the flow of illegal narcotics, trumps any concern, to coin another phrase, trumps any concern they have about the perhaps ethical and legal issues around this? This is raw politics, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, it's, you know, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know all the facts, but I think he has the best intentions here. And honestly, when you talk about the war on drugs, and we've talked about this before, what he ran on, trying to stop the drugs, I mean, they've done a lot of damage to the United States with these drug cartels.
Arguably an act of war in importing them into the United States. Interesting. All right. Well, from boats to Bibles. Now, Bible sales have surged after the assassination of Conservative activist Charlie Kirk. So after the break.